Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblue, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
We know that we've got a heck of a test coming up this weekend, but I'm excited to see how we respond to that challenge and get down there and just go out and do what we've been doing all year.
Obviously, they're not going to hand you the game, and you got to outplay somebody. And we played very, very well tonight. I don't know if we outplayed Ole Miss. We just made our runs count, made our swings count.
Little baseball off the top of the show there. Monty Lee and Clemson getting ready to take on Miami tonight. Chad Holbrook and the Gamecocks, game 2 of their series against Ole Miss, a win last night over the Rebels. They're playing very, very well. Welcome into Sports Talk. Hope you're doing well. A special Good Friday. We're going to turn your Good Friday into a great Friday show anyway. Glad you're with us. Maybe you had the day off, cutting off a little early, getting ready for your holiday weekend with Easter right around the corner. Phil has already started his Easter holiday. He is off tonight. So you've got yours truly, Kevin McCrary, alongside the Professor Tom Hayes behind the glass, Larkin Belton, and we're going to be hanging out with you the next couple of hours. We've got, again, a great show put together for you, a lot to discuss and talk about. Sweet 16 on 2 fronts. We have the USC women playing tonight. They get started in about an hour in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Every picture I've seen of Sioux Falls, South Dakota this week looks absolutely depressing. Glad I'm not there. On television. You've also got the men and their 4 Sweet 16 games, the final 4 Sweet 16 games before we are full-fledged into the Elite 8. And if you like the ACC, tonight's your night because all 4 games feature an ACC team, Pro.
It's interesting. And, of course, Syracuse, it'll be interesting to see them play Gonzaga. Syracuse, again, a team people say you win, you belong in the tournament. No, you shouldn't have been invited in the first place, but they got there. And you have to give them credit for that. Last night went as I expected. I just did not think the margin of victories was going to be as wide as it was. But now that I think about it, we had so many great buzzer beaters last week. We knew the pendulum was going to swing the other direction and maybe give us some blowouts. And I hope we found some more Buddy Hield converts after last night's performance against A&M.
Yes, very good performance. And now we're going to get that Kansas-Oklahoma rematch that everybody is dreaming about. Hopefully, we'll get to see that happen, and it'll be a great game. And checking the Sports Talk Tournament Challenge, Corn, I just want to see. Look, I'm in second place. I didn't know that. I just pulled it up. So I'm in second place. That's not too bad. How about that? I'm being serious. I did not know that I was in second place behind somebody that has Kentucky that's ahead of me. So I'm in pretty good shape so far. I have North Carolina winning it all. I have North Carolina and Oklahoma in my championship game. So at least those 2 teams are still intact. Let's see where Corn is, though. Maybe that's why he took here it is. And Corn is king of all time is his handle on here, of course. He's in 18th place.
Wow.
So a ways to go. Larkin's in here somewhere. Larkin's in 9th place, the producer bracket in 9th place. We're going to jump into things here on the other side of the break. Stick around. Sports Talk is breaking up here on a Friday night. Let's set the table for you. 800-956-7266 is our phone number, so you can reach out and grab a line. Corn's not here tonight. I like to take a lot of calls. Phone calls are fun, especially on a Friday. So if you want to get something off your chest, if you want to brag a little bit about your bracket, make a prediction about the Sweet 16 matchups tonight, if you want to chime in on the USC women and Sioux Falls, South Dakota, we can do that. We could talk a little spring football. Clemson is getting off the practice field as we speak. We'll get some post-practice coverage for you later in the program as soon as we get our hands on the audio post-Clemson practice. USC will have its first major scrimmage of the spring tomorrow. The Gamecocks continuing to go through their workout, so we can talk a little football. We're always willing to talk a little football. Anything that is on your mind, 800-956-7266. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, @SportsTalkSC is our Twitter feed. You can also hit us up via email, talkback@sportstalksc.com. Our website, sportstalksc.com, updated regularly throughout the day and night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. sportstalksc.com, there and available and at your service. A few notes that we will pass along to you that are coming down this afternoon on the basketball coaching front, and things start heating up really now going through the Final Four. It's kind of a smorgasbord of coaching news in college basketball, and there's some things happening right now. Georgia Tech has fired Brian Gregory. A little bit of a surprise, I think, with Brian Gregory getting the heave-ho. They struggled in the regular season, but kind of found themselves towards the end of the regular season, into the ACC tournament, into the NIT, where they made the quarterfinals. They beat South Carolina, lost in the next round. But Brian Gregory has been fired after 5 seasons in Atlanta. So Georgia Tech is coach hunting again, and they're paying 2 guys not to coach now. They're still paying Paul Hewitt. Mm-hmm. Now they're paying Brian Gregory, and they're going to have to pay another guy to come in there coach. So a revolving door, never a good thing if you're Brian Gregory is a good coach. I've watched him coach. He's not a bad coach. Yes, they underachieve, but things happen. It's sports. 80s have to get this. This is what I don't understand. And I know fans, they put all this pressure into Georgia Tech. They have the history, the resources. They're in Atlanta. That's a hotbed for recruiting. And maybe there's other things going on, but there is no question that Brian Gregory is a great coach. He worked under Tom Izzo. Sharp as a tack. I don't understand.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, of course, he was Oliver Purnell's replacement, I think, at Dayton when Oliver Purnell took the Clemson job. And I think that's why Miller stays at Dayton, because a lot of guys that leave Dayton and all of them win for some reason, just like Tulsa, they run into some problems, especially going to these major state institutions. And Brian Gregory is another victim of that, but he will land on his feet at another university, there's no doubt.
The Rock Hill Herald has confirmed that James Madison has reached out and maybe even interviewed their head coach, Pat Kelsey, for their vacancy. Tom Hickman confirming that news to the Herald, and it's been reported out of Virginia that interview took place earlier this week. So that could be something to keep an eye on for the Winthrop basketball program. And according to multiple reports, former USC hoop star Mike Dunleavy will take over the head coaching job at Tulane. This will be his first college job. Dunleavy made his name in the NBA as a coach with the Lakers, the Trailblazers, the Clippers, the Bucks. Might be leaving somebody out in there. He's coached a bunch in the NBA, won a bunch of games in the NBA, but he's never been a college coach. He's 62 years old, so we'll see how that works out. And, Pro, you were pointing this out. It is kind of an interesting trivia fact that the past 3 Tulane coaches have all had connections to the state of South Carolina.
3 out of the last 4, I'm not sure. Of course, Dave Dickerson from my neck of the woods in Bamberg County that was a long time in Maryland. He took the Tulane job as his first head coaching job, and that was right when Katrina hit. In fact, the story was that when the new recruits came in with their parents, he said, "Hello, how you doing? Turn around." And all of them had to leave New Orleans because Katrina was headed their way. And it was a struggle there for him. And he ended up an assistant's job at Ohio State.
And Ed Conroy,
was
just recently fired in the middle of a game, as it turned out. Or he found out that he was fired in the middle of a game that they ended up winning. So that's a tough gig, and we'll see if Mike Dunleavy can get it done. All right, those are the main coaching notes that we wanted to pass along, and I have some other things that will move throughout the program. Corn isn't here tonight, in case you haven't surmised that, but recruiting is here. So you recruiting Knicks. You will have some Good Friday recruiting coming up. Some good recruiting on Good Friday. Let's jump out to the phones, though, because I do want to get phone calls rolling. 800-956-7266. Dylan is calling. He's on the line in Fountain Inn. Welcome in.
Yeah, hey guys, it's Delvin. I'm sorry, he couldn't hear me that good. I'm on my cell
Oh,
phone.
Delvin. Okay, what's up, Delvin?
That's about it. First of all, on the coaching front, Rick Stansbury is the leading candidate in Western Kentucky, so we could see him back as the head coach again since Texas A&M.
Yeah, the NCAA better set up a substation in Bowling Green.
Yeah, and my second call is, what do you think about the conversation that Coach K had with that Oregon player last night? I think that Coach K been a little hypocritical since he got Grayson Allen on his team and all the shenanigans he be pulling in the game.
Yeah, I mean, was it confrontation? I mean, I haven't seen any video. The guy busted a three in the final seconds of a blowout, and that's a little bush league. People don't like that sort of thing. So you're showing up Duke. No one's going to shed any tears for Duke. Did Coach K say something to him in the handshake line? He would have been well within his rights to do that. What I don't understand is if he did that, he could just say, yeah, I didn't like that, and I told him I didn't appreciate it. But he's denying that he did it at all, and the player says he did. Now, I have not seen any video. Granted, I haven't looked really hard for video of it. I think it's a non-story. I wouldn't have a problem with Coach K saying something. I don't have a – if the player wants to do something like that, fine. I know coaches don't really like that sort of thing when their players do that. It is frowned upon, but it's not against the rules.
The point I like to make is this, and you got to understand that if you're a Duke, and Dean Smith used to do this too, don't take away from a guy's victory because he feels the euphoria of beating the king. He probably wouldn't have taken that three if it wasn't Duke. But because you are hated, you love to be hated because you win all the time. So when somebody sticks it in your face, don't get upset and then try to rain on their parade by chastising them. That's the way I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you shoot a three. That's like stealing a base when you're up 6 runs in the 9th inning. You don't really do those sorts of things. But what I think the big issue here is Mike Krzyzewski's denying that he did anything, and the player said that Mike Krzyzewski said something. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Krzyzewski probably doesn't think they said he confronted him or had this big exchange, and there's no video of that, and there's a million cameras on the court after a game during the handshake line. So I have no doubt that Mike Krzyzewski probably said something to the player along the lines of, hey, that wasn't a real cool move, but I don't think he berated him. I seriously doubt that he berated him, and there wasn't any sort of video evidence. Maybe it'll show up. If there is, hit us up on Twitter, email it to us at talkback@sportstalksc.com. I'd like to see it, but I'm sure the passions and emotions of a game on both sides, these things happen. So to me, it is pretty much a non-story. Thanks, Delvin. Have a nice weekend. Happy Easter to you. We'll keep it on the phones, 800-956-7266, as we go to Tommy in Heath Springs. Welcome in, Tommy.
Yes, sir. Could you tell me the status of Kevin Crosby, please, sir?
The Gamecock tight end?
Yes, he's still with the team. Is he playing, or what is his situation?
He is definitely still with the team. I know he was the guy out of Bamberg that people had a lot of high expectations for, and they thought he was going to do really big things. And he is still listed on the depth chart right now. He is second. Him and Kyle Markway are both in that Orr position as the backup to Hayden Hurst at tight end. But I've heard some coaches say some good things about Kevin Crosby, and they thought maybe this is a guy that there were rumors last year that he was thinking about transferring, and he wasn't traveling with the team. And again, this was a big time prospect that the Gamecocks brought in. Well, he's only a sophomore.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you change coaches, it's always the better for some players. And the position that they have at that H-back position, he's tailor-made for that. He doesn't have to block inline block, and he can use his girth to get open.
4 Sweet 16 games tonight on the men's side, and all 4 do involve an ACC team. You've got Notre Dame and Wisconsin. That's the first game to tip off. Then Virginia, number 1 seed, playing Iowa State, a 4 seed. Syracuse and Gonzaga, that's 2 double-digit seeds that are still alive. Syracuse, let's face it, none of us thought Syracuse should be in the tournament, and I don't think many people outside of the selection committee thought Syracuse belonged in the tournament, but they have proven the committee right, at least in terms of making it to the Sweet 16, and really that's a coin flip in terms of making the Elite Eight. One of those 2 teams is going to be in the Elite Eight. Gonzaga, they had to play their way into the tournament too. Both those teams were on the outside looking in, going into their conference tournaments, and somehow got in. And then North Carolina and Indiana, that's going to be the game of the night probably, at least on paper. You talk about 2 blue blood programs going at it. North Carolina has been so good, but would anybody be shocked? Would anybody be shocked if Indiana won that game? You'd be shocked?
The only shock I would not have if this game is not a blowout. I really do believe
You think
that.
North Carolina's going to blow them out?
Their front court, when they start to run and push that ball up the court, obviously they're going to be switching and making sure they have one of their big men, shot blockers, underneath that basket when Yogi Ferrell tries to go in there. So he's the straw that makes Indiana's drink, palatable. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and whether he stays out on the perimeter tonight, because I think that Tar Heel defense is going to be the difference in this game.
We shall see, and they get started here. The first round of games, at least the first 2 get started in the next 30 minutes. And then also coming up right at the top of the after USC and Syracuse at the Sioux Falls, South Dakota Sweet 16 regional, where the Gamecocks will take on the Orange. The winner of that matchup will face Tennessee or Ohio State in the next round. Then you got baseball tonight. Mentioned this earlier, Clemson opening up that series with Miami, a battle of 2 top 15 teams. Miami top 5, top 10, certainly in almost every poll, and Clemson's been playing very well. That should be a heck of a game. We'll see if it starts on time. It's supposed to start at 7 o'clock. The Clemson official Twitter feed for their baseball team indicated that they'd been at the ballpark for about an hour and hadn't even gotten off the bus yet because of lightning in the area there in South Florida. So we'll see if that one gets off on time. South Carolina and Ole Miss, they play at 7:30, so about an hour away from first pitch there in Oxford. The Gamecocks won last night 5-1. Coming up after our next break, and we come out of that bottom of the hour break, we'll have John Whittle from the BigSpur.com joining us. He is in Oxford. He was there last night, and the Gamecocks playing very, very well right now. 4-0 in SEC play, and they didn't get to ease into conference play. They played a top 20 Arkansas team last week, and you're looking at a top 10 Ole Miss team in almost every poll that I've been able to find in Oxford on the road, and they scored 2 runs in the first inning. It was very similar to how they beat Arkansas last week. Not quite as big of a margin. They jumped out to an 8-run lead on Arkansas, but they got that 2-run lead, and Schmidt was efficient and effective, scattered around his hits, and the Gamecocks got the win in Oxford. John Whittle coming up from the BigSpur.com. We'll get back to your phone calls momentarily. Go ahead and reach out and grab a line, 800-956-7266. We want to head out to the guest line now, and joining us from Oxford, Mississippi, John Whittle, one of the hardest working guys in all of sports. And he's made the trek to the Magnolia State to take in the Gamecocks and Rebels series. And he took in game one last night. And, John, another win for the Gamecocks. Boy, they are really playing well, especially playing well early, setting the table, if you will, setting the like they did against Arkansas last week, did the same thing last night against Ole Miss.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Came out and scored 2 runs in the top of the first inning, and then another one in the second. But it really lets your pitcher kind of settle in and pitch with some comfort out there, knowing that he's doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, he can go out there and pitch his game and pitch with the lead.
Well, Gene Cohn was your Holly Farms player of the game, but he just did a little bit of everything for the Gamecocks in terms of his night at the plate and settled into that leadoff spot. And I've always thought he needs to be in that leadoff spot. I know Chad Holbrook has tweaked that spot a little bit, but Gene Cohn really seems comfortable in that number 1 hole.
He does, and he started every game in the leadoff hole last year, except for I think it was 1, maybe 2. And so it is a spot where he's comfortable and a spot that he's produced this year. I mean, he's hitting .424 in the lead spot this season. Everyone else is combined hitting .167. So not only is he performing really well, he's kind of solidified that spot.
In general, the lineup has been a little more stable, it seems, since SEC play started for Holbrook, settling in on who he wants where. I know he's, as he said, sitting some good players, but he does seem to be going with his regulars now.
He's finally gotten his guys who he's settled on. I mean, the only cheese he will really make from game to game is when Chris Cohen needs a day off behind the plate. He's catching tonight, so the lineup is the same tonight as it has been the first 4 SEC games. But when he needs a break, which will probably be tomorrow afternoon, then John Jones will go back there and catch, and TJ Hopkins is most likely the guy who's going to go into the lineup. They'll DH Alex Sestino and put another outfielder out there, probably TJ Hopkins. But Clark Solomon has done everything that's been asked of him of late too, so he's kind of worked his way back into the mix.
Well, people are always looking to see this team pick up and get to those ways they were when they made those 3 straight runs to the College World Series and being successful and winning the title 2 of those times. The key to me, though, is when you look at hitting and pitching, the intangibles of those teams where you had some characters on that team that knew when to turn it on, turn it off, and always knew the moment. I know it's early, but can you sense that there's some leadership growing in this year's squad that maybe was missing last year?
Oh, there's certainly some guys like that. I mean, you look at Dom Thompson-Williams as a guy who brings a little bit of swagger into the lineup and typically performs well in big spots. And John Jones is another guy who maybe doesn't have quite the vocal leadership qualities as maybe a Dom Thompson-Williams, but he's the kind of guy who senses the big moment. And when the chips are down, that's when he's at his best. And that's when he comes through with his big hits and his RBIs. So, those are a couple of guys. Marcus Mooney is healthy this year, and he's always had a little bit of the swagger about him. And, you kind of look at it from the position player standpoint, but Clark Schmidt, I mean, you gotta really like what you see out of him and Josh Fagan, both of those guys on the mound. They want the ball no matter the situation and know how to make the big pitch at the right time.
What's the breakdown on tonight's lineup and the matchup against the Rebels?
Same lineup is the other 4 SEC games, and Ole Miss throwing a right-hander, Chad Smith, a power arm, but hasn't had a lot so far this year. His ERA is getting close to 4. He's walked 13 in 25 innings, so that's not a great number either. I mean, we talked about Braden Webb, who's on the mound tonight for the Gamecocks. He's walked a few too many guys also. He's walked 17 and 26 innings. But opponents aren't hitting him. They're only hitting 147 off Braden. Chad Smith, Ole Miss's starter, opponents are hitting 291 against him. So, South Carolina's got a chance tonight to, but they've hit righties a little bit better this year. Power righties a little bit better this year than, they have guys from the left side. So, I think this is a pretty good matchup tonight for South Carolina.
Talking about John Whittle from thebigspur.com. Give him a follow on Twitter, as he will be following every pitch in Oxford as USC and Ole Miss get ready for game 2 of that series. And last night, the Gamecocks won 5-1, John, but they did leave some guys on base. And I know Chad Holbrook said after the game that he was getting some flies there as they were leaving guys on base, and Ole Miss was squaring some balls up, but they just weren't able to find gaps. And he maybe felt like they dodged a little bit of a bullet.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly left some guys on base last night, had the bases loaded a couple of times and didn't score anything. Really lost a great opportunity in the 8th inning, bases loaded with 1 out, and couldn't score anybody. The lead was only 3 at that point, but got another run in the 9th inning, and some brilliant work from Josh Reagan. But you're right, left a few too many runners on base. But when things like that happen, you've got to be perfect in all the other areas. And South Carolina was really, really good defensively, made some plays, and the pitching staff made big pitches when they needed to. So, you know what? If you leave a few guys on base, if you're perfect everywhere else across the board and just come up with a couple of big hits, then you're still going to win your fair share of games.
You reported that Taylor Widener, of course, did not make the trip and is dealing with a strained muscle in his back. How concerned are the coaches about that injury, and could this be something that keeps him sidelined for an extended period?
I don't think so. They toyed with the idea of bringing him anyway. He may have been able to pitch some this weekend, maybe today, or maybe tomorrow. But it's just one of those things where they figured they've got some other options. So they'll sit him down, and he's a candidate to start on Tuesday against College of Charleston. Obviously, Taylor hasn't pitched his best this year, not yet at least. So they could opt to go with somebody else in the midweek in that starting role. But, he should be healthy enough to at least be considered on Tuesday against Charleston.
The fans are always going to be tough on the guy that follows a very successful coach. But when you look at Coach Holbrook now, he's got a few more toys to play with this time around with this roster. Do you see him getting more comfortable in his role as being the head man?
Yeah, I think so. Last year you kind of hit on a big point, and that there really just weren't a whole heck of a lot of options. And, no matter who he turned to, it just wasn't real good players there. And I hate to take anything away from those guys. It was almost an NCAA tournament team, but this team is a lot better. You look at, what's sitting on the bench tonight. You look at a TJ Hopkins. You look at a Danny Blair and a Clark Scolomero. I mean, you look at what's sitting on the bench, and these guys are capable of being really, really good. And, if somebody falters this year, then he's got places to turn to that can help the lineup. Last year when guys falter, when Gene Cone isn't hitting well, when his average drops low, and when Connor Bright is hitting below 200, there wasn't anywhere that he could really go to. So now he's got some options, and now that he's got more talent, it certainly makes him look like a better coach, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing when your players perform. You're just a brilliant coach, and when they don't, you're not. It's like they don't coach them to not get hits. Yeah, that's not how it works. But yeah, I've always said Chad Holbrook will be just fine, and the team's really playing well. It's a long season. It's a grind, as we know, but a heck of a start for the Gamecocks. John, great stuff as always. Again, you can give John a follow at John Whittle on Twitter. He's there in Oxford. Does a great job for thebigspur.com, and it was great talking to you, John.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Thanks so much.
Anytime. As the Gamecocks and Rebels will get started in about 45 minutes. Clemson and Miami, I just checked, and they are a go as scheduled. The Lightning must have passed, and they're warming up, and they'll get started at the top of the hour, and we'll keep tabs on that big matchup down in Coral Gables.
Well, not to take anything from Ray Tanner, one heck of a coach. But I always ask people the question, Coach Holbrook doesn't seem to have it. Then I ask him, how many championships did Coach Tanner win when Chad Holbrook wasn't on the staff? And they look at me like, okay, I just asked the question.
Thanks again to John Whittle for joining us on the Sports Talk Hotline. You can join us as well, 800-956-7266, toll-free call for you. You can also hit us up on Twitter, at Sports Talk SC is how you hit us up on Twitter. Vic has a tweet to us here on our Sports Talk Twitter feed, and it asks if Frank is playing us. I would love to have had Gamecock great Mike Dunleavy back in Columbia. I don't know. Here's the thing about Mike Dunleavy, and I know that he's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts in the Palmetto State, in Columbia specifically, but he's never coached in college. It didn't end particularly well for him in terms of his all those guys got pretty upset with the way George Felton was treated. He didn't come back for a while. They patched that up. He has been back for their Legends dinners, but would he be an upgrade from Frank Martin? No. Probably not. I mean, there's a huge difference between coaching in the NBA and coaching in college. That doesn't mean he can't do it. Basketball's basketball. Larry Brown has done fine. Well, sans the fact that his team wasn't even allowed to play in the NCAA tournament this year because of things that happened or didn't happen under his watch. But I think fans want him to come back for that sentimental reason of having Dunleavy back on the sidelines or back on the Gamecock bench. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily the right fit. And sometimes when you bring a guy back, it gets very awkward. If it doesn't work out, then you got to fire one of your legends. There's a lot of moving parts there. So I don't think that I think that ship has sailed.
That is 62 years old. But I will tell people this. One of the things you got to understand is if you got a pretty good coach, people are going to go after him, whether he's leaving or not. And you'd rather have a coach whose name is being mentioned rather than have one who people don't even care about. The other key point is this. If I'm a coach's agent, and this is just me, I'm not signing the deal until after the Final Four. Because, you want to just ease into management and suggest that, a few little other trinkets of stuff I want. When I head to the Final Four and KMAC, as it is the shopping mall for head coaches when you get to the Final Four because everybody is there. And then you go ahead and hammer out the deal if you're staying after the Final Four. But,
I think this is a big time for South Carolina. They need to get Frank Martin in the fold. And another tweet coming in, Frank Martin isn't signed a contract until all other options are gone. And then he put Louisville question what happens with Rick Pitino at Louisville. He's survived everything else that's happened there. And there hasn't been any major indication that something else is going to go down and be first in line for that job. Probably not. But Frank Martin would be in line for certain positions. Certainly he has street cred. And I think, frankly, no pun intended, frankly, I think that he would listen to some other people. He's down to the last year of his contract. He's at a school that will always be a football-first school. No matter what he does, he will be playing second fiddle. And whether it's fair or not, true or not, you can make a case that Frank Martin feels underappreciated at South Carolina, that people don't really get him at South Carolina. And I say that for this reason. He still takes heat for the way he coaches. People don't like the way he coaches on the bench. That bothers people still. Despite the fact that he set or tied a school record for wins, that still rubs some people the wrong way. He probably doesn't get as much promotion for his program as the women do. And maybe you could say, well, KMAC, the women are better, but still they seem to really promote the women a lot more. He was suspended for a game for, as he put it, being who he's always been. South Carolina knew Frank Martin and what he was all about when they hired him. It wasn't like it was in the closet and it just came out. I mean, Frank Martin he's always been an open book. And the second point is I know they had crowds showing up during the regular season, and they had really one of their best seasons attendance-wise, maybe their best season ever since they've been to that new building attendance-wise. But when the postseason hit, the NIT, people jumped off that ship so fast. I mean, they had 2,000, 3,000 people in there for both NIT games. And that's just no commitment. I mean, and you're Frank Martin, you're sitting there, you're looking at this empty arena, and you're looking at your contract, and you're at a school where it's all about. I mean, he's complaining about how only the bag gets covered. Also, he's got 5 guys that he doesn't know what's going to happen with. He might be starting from scratch. Maybe this is his time to get out. You're losing Carrera. You're losing your 2 Lithuanian players inside of Kevichus and Kaichinis.
However,
I mean, this would be the time to bounce if you're going to bounce.
However, if you win at a football school, Oklahoma, Florida, Dale Brown at LSU, those guys are kings whenever they come back to their institutions because they made it there.
Yeah, Corn's not here, but recruiting is. We are not going to let you down here on Sports Talk. We're going to make sure you get that recruiting fix, and here it is. We'll begin tonight's recruiting report with defensive end Alec Jackson, 6'5", 240 pounds, out of Montgomery, Alabama. He was at USC Tuesday to watch spring practice and feels good about the Gamecocks and their interest in him. He's been to North Carolina for a camp and a game, and right now has the Gamecocks and Tar Heels even at the top of his list with UAB third. Tuesday was Jackson's first visit to USC, and he hopes to revisit his mother. He said the fact that it's an SEC program and everything that comes with it is a big reason why the Gamecocks are one of his favorites. Jackson has also visited UAB, Georgia Tech, and Troy. He's going to Alabama today. He has offers from USC, North Carolina, Troy, Cincinnati, Southern Miss, South Alabama, and Charlotte. He doesn't plan to make a decision until signing day last season. Jackson totaled 69 tackles with 21 tackles for a loss and 7.5 sacks. Defensive end Mikael McDaniel of Loganville, Georgia, is not taking an official visit to Texas A&M this weekend. He's been to USC and Georgia, and those are his top 2, and right now they're tied. He'll make his final decision once the NCAA approves the classes he's taking this semester. A couple of other quick hitter recruiting notes. TL Hanna running back Devon Dean picked up an offer from Troy. Clemson target defensive end Jordan Williams of Virginia Beach has landed a Duke offer. Running back Ardarius Lemons of Clearwater, Florida, has committed to North Carolina. He visited USC's practice yesterday. Clemson target Justin Foster of Shelby, North Carolina, picked up a Mississippi State offer. USC offensive line target TJ Moore of Charlotte has been offered by Colorado State. And USC target offensive lineman Eric Douglas out of Charlotte has picked up offers from Colorado State. And Clemson's Brad Brownell today has offered 2017 forward 6'8" Nate Watson of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and 2019 athlete Deshaun Sheffield of St. Simons Island, Georgia, is visiting Clemson Friday. That is our recruiting report for tonight. If you want more recruiting, don't forget it's on our website, and there's lots of good stuff recruiting-wise on our website, sportstalksc.com, where all of these recruiting notes that I've just passed along to you, actually even more in-depth versions of the notes that I pass along to you, available there at sportstalksc.com. Clemson Audio is in following their practice today. We'll hear from maybe Wayne Gallman. We'll jump on the Wayne train if we have time. Also in hour number 2, we'll get the full Monty, get our NASCAR report from Monty Dutton. We'll check in on March Madness, Sweet 16 action on the women's and men's sides, tipping off in just a couple of minutes. USC women taking on Syracuse, and a couple of men's games also tipping off that we're going to have our eye on in hour number 2, Pro. We're going to be just hot and heavy here in the final hour of the week. So we'll keep it right here. Stay tuned. We'll be back after a quick timeout here on Sports Talk as we roll along here on South Carolina Radio Network.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Final hour of the week here on Sports Talk. Glad you're with us. Hope you're doing well. Kevin McCrary, the Professor Tom Hayes at your service. Phil Kornbluth with the night off. Happy Easter to you. Happy Good Friday. Glad you are along for the ride wherever you have us dialed in around the state on one of our many great affiliates across this great state. Maybe you're tuning in online at sportstalksc.com. Maybe you're actually watching us on our video stream. You brave souls out there that are watching us on the video stream, I'll give you a wave on the camera here in our studio. Larkin Belton behind the glass. You can join us this hour on the program, 800-956-7266. That is a toll-free call for you. We actually send that bill to Kornbluth, and he pays it. So we encourage you just to call, because the more you call, the higher that bill gets that Korn has to pay. And we like to jack that thing up as much as possible. So won't cost you just your time here if you give us a buzz at 800-956-7266. If the whole telephone thing's not your cup of tea, maybe you prefer the social media venue, you can interact with us on Twitter at 140 characters or less, of course, at Sports Talk SC. If you want to go a little longer, you can drop us an email, talkback@sportstalksc.com. Also, there's links to everything that we do, as we point out periodically, our recruiting, our game stories, our practice coverage, whatever we have, it's on our website, sportstalksc.com. And they're about to tip things off here. In fact, I think they have tipped things off in Sioux Falls.
Tipped off, and as usual, South Carolina gets off to the slow start.
They are down 4-0. Just blinked, and they're already down 4-0. So the Gamecocks are going to take Syracuse. And one thing about the Orange, they have that full court press. They turn teams over a lot. So the Gamecock guards will have to play well today against the Orange. And they had a pretty competitive game last year in the Bahamas in a preseason tournament. Syracuse had a double-digit lead in the second half. The Gamecocks rallied and won that game. And there was a little smack talk going on in the build-up to Syracuse saying that they weren't really that concerned or overwhelmed by the Gamecocks. And some people that were there were tweeting that during the warm-ups there was some, shall we say, very deliberate stare downs going on across the court between the two teams.
Well, it'd be interesting. I guess the only smack talk is you can get into that Final Four and see and take your chances against a UConn team that just seems to be a juggernaut, almost like those old UCLA teams years ago that would win every championship. I think 10 out of 12. And
does anybody have anything? I saw at 538 they had that the percentages that only 4 teams truly had a shot at beating UConn. South Carolina was one of those 4 teams. They gave South Carolina, based on all the analytics, an 8% chance.
And that was high.
That was one of the higher ones. I think Notre Dame might have been the only one that was any higher. They might have been at 11. But South Carolina was one of the higher ones. Baylor was 4%. Nobody really has much of a shot. Now, you always have a shot in sports, but it's a pretty small shot. USC women in Syracuse, the timeout, a little over 4 minutes to play, 8-4 Qs in that one. On the men's side, Virginia and Iowa State underway, 7-2 Virginia, 16-50 counting there. Let's shift gears and jump over to some football. Clemson, another spring practice in the books, and following the workout, they had a few players and coaches stop by. One of those coaches, offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott, and he shared his thoughts on what Clemson did well today, what they need to do better as they go forward and continue to grind it out here during spring drills.
You know, the biggest thing is just the things that we can control. We had a couple of snap issues. We had a fumble at the mesh. You know, just things and point of emphasis that we talked about. You know, even after the championship game, don't lose to Clemson. You know, those were the biggest things. But then there were a lot of good in the scrimmage as well. A lot of competitive plays. You know, the defense is really, really challenging us. You know, Brandon's been very aggressive this spring, challenging these guys to get better. So it's been really, really competitive. And obviously, wanting to see our guys compete in tough situations. So really proud of the way they competed it, but really focusing on the turnovers and just the simple things that we can control, the fundamentals.
Are you starting to see any separation with Adam or any of the other running backs for the number 2 spot?
You know, Wayne's doing well. Wayne really has improved. Really challenging him coming back this year to really focus on the things he controls. So I'm seeing him really try to distance himself. You know, C.J. Fuller has been impressive. You know, Adam has been impressive. You see his confidence grow daily. You know, Tyshawn, the first couple of practices were very impressive as well. And then you had a little bit of a tweak to his Achilles. Probably scared him more than anything. So just really trying to get him back going. But he showed some flashes today. So all those guys are competing, not ready to really say, you know, who's that number 2 guy. Still got to keep him hungry. You know, still got to keep pushing Wayne as well.
I keep hearing that Adam physically, and he talked about the other day that he feels like he's getting it back. What about mentally? Do you think he's getting there where he needs to be?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You know, the biggest area for improvement for him is knowledge and pass protection, and then just confidence to be able to, what I call sitting there and stick his face in the fan. And you're seeing him improve daily with that. And then another thing, too, is, you know, he's a big guy, a strong guy. But he's not a natural violent runner. But so really challenging him to develop that confidence to really accelerate as opposed to just using his girth to fall forward. And you're starting to just see him put it all together. He's a lot more confident. He's getting reps with the first unit, second unit in tough situations. So I'm really seeing his confidence grow.
How about on the offensive line? Is the competition between Tyrone and Mavericks pretty tight?
Still pretty tight. I mean, they're competing every day. Obviously, you know, it's not just him, but you got Hearn too. So you really got to find who's the best 2 guards out of those 3 so that we can go. They got a great opportunity to challenge themselves today. We were down a couple guys, a little thin on the offensive line, so those guys had to play all over the place. You had Maverick out at tackle, you had Hearn at tackle. Obviously, Tyrone's going to be an interior guy, but there's a lot of competition, but it is still tight between those 2. And also, we want those guys to push Hearn on the other side too.
Is anybody pushing Jordan?
Pushing Jordan, you're seeing progress. You're seeing progress with Mylan Richard, Cannon Smith, Garrett. I'd say Garrett will be the guy right now that's pushing Leggett the most. You know, I think Leggett's in a situation where he's going to have to challenge himself. Obviously, his skill set is different. Each of those guys brings something different to the table, but he's got the ability to have the complete package, closer to that Dwayne Allen, prototypical guy for this system. So Garrett will be the guy pushing the most, but seeing progress that you like to see out of Mylan and also Ken.
Coach Sweeney told us yesterday he's also been really pleasantly surprised with Greenlee. Has he stood out to you?
You know, Greenlee, there's no question from a physical standpoint, just getting him to having the discipline to go out and execute consistently on a consistent basis. So that's his biggest area of improvement, and you're seeing that. And again, you know, he's getting thrown into situations and challenging him. We like him in some of our short yardage stuff because he's not afraid to put his face in there. We're just building him to be able to function in all situations.
How about with Ingram and Pollard? Do you think there's a good chance they might see the field next season?
You know, it's still early, too early to tell, but very, very pleased with where those guys are. You know, obviously Pollard was down a little bit today, but we're very, very pleased with Ingram, the way he moves. They both move very well. They've been, you can tell they come from great football programs, so they're going to be prepared. They're definitely going to push. You know, not ready to say where they're going to be at because we still got 6 practices, and then we got 30 practices before we play. But I could definitely see those guys pushing for being guys that contribute early.
What are you seeing out of those backup wide receivers like Shadell, Travion, Ray?
You know, Ray is just the flashes that everybody sees. You know, you see those flashes, but just getting him to be consistent. and compete at a high level every single play, and really go push Artavis and understand that Artavis' job is not set in stone, that you have an opportunity to go push him. Obviously, that's a position where you need two guys, but both of you guys should be pushing to be the first one to run out there. He's got that capability, so just maturing him and pushing him to do that. Shadell's been hampered a little bit with his foot. So he really hadn't been able to turn himself loose. And, Travion, with Mike's situation, not being able to go in live situations, he's getting a lot of work. And, he's showing a lot of good, still showing some immature moments, but we're really pleased with overall his progress.
With what Wayne did last year, are you seeing some effects of that pushing this group of guys this year?
I think so. And Wayne really embraces his role as a leader. And then also those guys got to push him not to be complacent, so they feed off of each other. But there's an expectation that we try to hold ourselves to. We're not perfect people, but we want best to be the standard in everything that we do. So they're all competing off the field. Even CJ Fuller, has really turned it up in the classroom, which is, been my biggest area with him to try and be the best because he's very capable. And so you're starting to see what Wayne's doing, the way that he's carrying himself. You're starting to see it resonate with the rest of the guys in the room. And Zach Brooks was really critical, to that culture while he was here. He might not have been the star on the field. He was the guy that set the tempo with the way that we live our lives in that room. And so now Wayne is kind of taking over that guy. He's the elder statesman. He's the one that everybody looks to, and he's pushing everybody.
Wayne was bragging on Tyshawn today, saying that he's really kind of taking it up a notch.
Right. And like I said, those first couple of days prior to the little twinge of the Achilles, and it was nothing major. I think it was just more mental. Obviously, I'd be scared to death too. Coming off of two serious injuries like that, and then all of a sudden I feel a little something in that same foot, and I think it just scared him more than anything. So, and I'm going to be smart with him as well and make sure that I don't push him too hard until I know exactly the severity of it. And we got him the spring break, and he came back the last couple of days, and he seems like he's been on a mission.
What is the status of Mike Williams?
Mike Williams is he's practicing every day except for in live contact. We're making sure that we don't get him hit when he is practicing. So we have him in a green jersey. Everybody knows not to have contact, but he's full speed. He's competing, and once we go live, then obviously we take him out because it's going to be very difficult not to tackle him.
When do you expect him to go live?
I would anticipate by the time we get back for fall camp, we'll be ready to turn him loose. I would think.
Is Kelly the solid number two guy right now?
It's hard to say. I think both of those guys are competing, and you would like to say that he is, but he's still got some things that he's got to clean up. And the same thing with Nick. And I think it's going to be more of a situation, depending on what has to be done in the game as to which guy you would run out there first. But we're really pushing Kelly, really pushing Nick to see who's going to separate as that guy.
What does Tucker have to do to get into that race?
I think Tucker just has to be consistent, continue to grasp the playbook, and when he gets his opportunities, take advantage of them, and just prove that he can command the entire system, both running and passing, and just show that he has that consistency. And that's where both Kelly and Nick got to improve, because that's what Deshaun, obviously everybody knows about Deshaun's talent, but what separates Deshaun from the rest of them is his understanding, his knowledge, ability to handle the system, and his consistency in decision making.
Tony, you guys have talked a lot about the culture of accountability with the players in terms of just rebounding from some of the things that you didn't do well yesterday. Did you see that among players, or is it something where you got to drag some of those guys to be coachable and things like that?
No, we got great leadership. That was probably one of the biggest concerns coming off of last season, especially on the offensive line, because you're losing Eric McLean. But Jay stepped right in. You're starting to see Mitch assert himself a little bit more. Even Tyrone's trying to be a leader. You're seeing him be a little bit more vocal. So those guys got accountability, and then I'm pushing Wayne, not to necessarily be more vocal, but to, hey, everything that you do, live the standard so that you can expect the standard from everybody else and hold them accountable to it.
Tony Elliott breaking down the Clemson practice from an offensive perspective, updating various things. If you want to get more from Clemson's spring drills today, you can check out the website, sportstalksc.com. We'll listen in on Wayne Gallman coming up a little later in the program. Let's check in on some basketball. Virginia off to a great start against Iowa State. They're up 20-7, 12:46 left in that one. Anthony Gill, the former Gamecock, in his final season now with Virginia, and the Hoos looking strong early, and USC and Syracuse on the women's side, 16-15 Syracuse as the first quarter winds down here, Pro.
And been a good game. Syracuse being a little bit more physical than South Carolina. And, of course, you have Tiffany Mitchell with 2 quick fouls in that first quarter that hampered the Gamecock offense.
She's playing with 2 fouls, though. They put her back out there. So they are now through the first. The Gamecocks will go into the second quarter down 1. Clemson and Miami are underway in Coral Gables. The Tigers and Hurricanes moving to the second inning. Clemson's up 1-0. A solo homer with 2 outs in the top of the first by Chris Oakey, giving the Tigers an early 1-0 lead in that one. There are scores that have come across the old wire here. One thing we can pass along, we want to say congratulations to Charleston Southern Stuart Lake. The Bucks won big today, and now Stuart Lake is the all-time winningest coach at Charleston Southern, part of the Ray Tanner coaching tree, doing very well there at CSU. So a big win for him. USC and Ole Miss will get started here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll keep you updated on that if there's any change in the action between the Gamecocks and Rebels as we move through the show here between now and 8 o'clock. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, the full Monty with Monty Dutton on the show. Virginia still all over Iowa State early in that men's game, and the USC women in Syracuse just starting the second quarter. In Syracuse, they're hanging around, Pro. They're up 18-15 early in the second quarter.
Yeah, as long as they can get in that press if they're hitting their shots. If they're not, then South Carolina can move the ball on them, move it in position to get it to their big people, and that's the key. But right now, I think the surprising thing is Syracuse is probably leading in rebounding right now against South Carolina because they've been the more physical team.
A lot of second chance points for the Orange in that one. It's 24-9 in the under 12 media timeout in the Virginia-Iowa State game. That's a 1 seed taking on a 4 seed. And if you like ACC basketball, again, this is the night for you in the Sweet 16. The Final Four Sweet 16 games all feature an ACC team. Notre Dame and Wisconsin will tip it up in just a couple of minutes. Gonzaga and Syracuse have the 9:40 start time. And then if you're going to burn the midnight oil tonight, 9:57 tip, North Carolina and Indiana. That's a 1 seed and a 5 seed. And Pro has gone on the record saying not only will North Carolina win, but they will blow out the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I smell a blowout. I really do in that one.
We'll see. We will see. All right. What else do we want to pass along? If you're just tuning in, Mike Dunleavy, former USC basketball coach, has been hired reportedly at Tulane, where he will replace former Citadel coach Ed Conroy, who was fired earlier this month. Winthrop is going to have to sweat out a little bit with Pat Kelsey. It looks like James Madison could make a run at him. They interviewed Kelsey earlier this week, according to report, and the Rock Hill Herald reports that Kelsey is on JMU's short list of candidates, and Georgia Tech is looking for a head coach. The Yellow Jackets fired Brian Gregory after 5 seasons. The Yellow Jackets struggled a little bit during the regular season, started putting it together late, did make a run to the quarterfinals of the NIT, and they had the honor, if you could call it that. It didn't mean much to Brian Gregory, apparently, but they ended both Clemson and USC's basketball seasons.
Yeah, and the thing about it is I think when you see a team turning the corner, you want to give the coach another chance, but I guess they wanted the 5-year plan to roll out. My thinking is if they fired the guy, they already know who they're going to hire.
The full Monty coming up next. We'll talk NASCAR with Monty Dutton. Time to talk a little NASCAR with our Full Monty segment. Monty Dutton joining us on the line now, as he does each and every Friday night. Monty, hope you're doing well. Happy Good Friday and happy early Easter to you.
Well, thanks. It's been a relatively good Friday, and I'm looking forward to reluctantly a weekend away from the umbilical cord between man and machine that is NASCAR.
Yes, no racing this weekend. I've been it's kind of entertaining to see all the drivers on social media where they go various places. Dale Jr. down in the Florida Keys. And we talked Danica Patrick is somewhere on a Caribbean island. They all really unplug literally during this week.
Yes, they go to places that you and I can't.
Right, right. Well, Danica Patrick better not spend too much on her vacation because she's $20,000 poor now after her actions at the Auto Club Speedway.
Well, she's I can't call her an excitable lad. Let's see, lass. She's an excitable lass.
Yeah, I think that's politically correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's no more politically incorrect for a woman than it is a man.
Sure.
Lassie is, lass is no worse than lad. Lassie is no less than laddie. And these are the issues that come up on off weekends.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Now, we're 5 races in, still very early in the season, but what are the storylines on Monty Dutton's mind 5 races into the NASCAR season?
I think that the racing is better. I think that for most of the race, it's a little better. The endings have been really good. I think so. I think there is some change and some positive change there. I think that in terms of the balance of power, there isn't any change at all because all the races have been won by people one would expect to win. And in the top 10 in points, the only real surprise is Austin Dillon in 10th place, and there's always someone like that. I mean, that doesn't mean that he might emerge, but you have cases where in every spring there's somebody like Eric Almirola or AJ Allmendinger or Paul Menard who are up in the standings early in the year. So there's nothing about that. There's been all this gnashing of teeth about how Joe Gibbs Toyotas are going to utterly dominate. Well, 5 races in, there's 3 Chevy wins, 1 Toyota win, and 1 Ford win. And while I do think that the Gibbs Racing team is right now the best assemblage in the sport, I think that based on the results of the season, there's absolutely nothing any different. Johnson's the only guy who's won twice. And so in terms of the balance of power, I don't think that there has been much of a shift at all, but I do think the competition is a little better.
Mm-hmm. Now, at this break, when you look at it and you say it's a field of normalcy, so to speak, if you had a surprise or 2 drivers who can make the chase at this point, as you see it, who would they be?
I don't think a real dark horse has emerged. When there's 16 spots, there's plenty of room for everybody who has a decent year. And so I think that the surprise is probably going to be someone like Casey Kane, who didn't do it last year but drives for a great team. I think that there's room for I think that, once again, Ryan Newman's made the last few years. I think they're probably, I think Austin Dillon is a good chance that he'll make it. But as I said, if you get in the chase and you don't win a race and you're 14th in points, that's not much of a surprise. I think the chase is big enough that anybody who has a half decent piddling season is going to make it. So it's difficult. It's by nature difficult, and probably not. I mean, this is not like saying this is not at all like in November picking the final 4 correctly. The final 4 for the chase. Now that's another one, but there'll be a surprise there too because the system guarantees it.
Now,
I mean, the fact is that one of my pet peeves is how people say, they talk about how the competition is so much better, and they say that's because nobody ever laps the field anymore. But nobody would lap the field in 1985 if these rules were in place. That's just a fact. And it always bothers me that people don't at least pay lip service to pointing out that inescapable fact.
Now, refresh my memory on the Chase rules. I'm thinking about Tony Stewart. Now, will he still be eligible for the Chase despite the fact that he's missing all these starts? Will they grant him the waiver? I remember this happened with Bush last year, and they granted him the waiver when he was hurt for the certain number of starts you have to have. Will he be able to get into the Chase when he gets back in the car?
I expect that they'll do the same thing they did for Bush, although I suppose technically speaking, Tony's accident wasn't in a NASCAR competition, this latest thing. I think that he'll have to make the top 30 in points, and that was something that Bush did very easily. But based on the season that Tony had last year, I think that you would have to say that it would be a much taller order than it was for a guy like Kyle Busch, who went on to win the championship. So I expect that if they do that, but I really expect that will be, first of all, we don't yet know when Tony will be back. And it's burning daylight, as they used to say on the high school practice field. And so I think that he'll have that right, but I think he's a much longer shot to actually do it. Of course, I thought Bush was a long shot, you know. It's hard to overestimate how much is possible the way this system is.
Right.
Now, let's face it. You can let us know the secret. I know these guys are going to exotic places, but let's face it. You got the computer, you got email, you got your iPhones. They're still communicating. They still got ideas burning that they're sharing, are they not?
Oh, there's a lot of communication between the driver lying out on a chase in the middle of on some exotic Caribbean isle. He's still texting back and forth with a poor slob who's trying to rebuild a car he wrecked last week. so yeah, the communication is there, and you know, I mean, I really don't begrudge these guys having to do that. I mean, that's the you know, if this were 1976, then all these guys will be trying to make some spending money out at some dirt track running a match race against each other. But those days are gone, and that's this is a much more affluent sport today. It shows at every level, and I think that one of my observations is that if NASCAR would have a lot easier time being ethnically diverse if they were socioeconomically diverse. In other words, what I'm getting around is if a poor boy still had a shot to get to the top, then there'd be a lot better chance that some of those poor boys would be African American and Latin and women. And so this has become so much of a sport of you get your chance because you got the money, and if you got the talent too, then you can go on. But I mean, the chance of a kid who's running, you know, at Greenville Pickens in the Charger division, and he's 17 years old on Saturday night, he better be real good and really impress somebody. You know, like for instance, the way that Mark Martin happened upon watching Joey Logano and told everybody he was going to be a great. Well, something like that. I mean, it's the same thing now for like, I'm trying to think of it. What actress was it that was discovered the soda fountain? I think it might have been Lana Turner. You know,
Marilyn Monroe.
That's the level of it is, you know, right place at the right time.
Marilyn Monroe.
I think Jodie Foster was discovered getting out of a taxi cab.
Well, there we go. And that taxi cab was driven by Robert De Niro. Oh, no,
there you go. You talking to me? You talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you wanted to see some talented drivers and see some diamonds in the rough, maybe some NASCAR scouts ought to be hanging out on I-285 in Atlanta doing rush hour.
I would suggest taxi drivers in New York, particularly from Martinsville. I think they could move right in there.
And then they would get the diversity box checked as well. So kill a bunch of birds with one stone there. Monty, we appreciate it. Have yourself a great Easter weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
I enjoyed the conversation as always.
Always. We enjoyed it. The pleasure was all ours. We'll be back. We're going to listen into a little bit from the Wayne train. Wayne Gallman coming up. Well, Syracuse was running that zone defense, the 2-3 zone against USC, and Tina Roy came in and busted up that zone. 5 3-pointers in the first half. She has 17 points, and USC has pushed ahead by 10 at the half, 43-33. So an impressive half there by Tina Roy. The Gamecocks were down after a quarter by a point, but really surged there midway through that second quarter, Pro.
Well, and of course they've gotten more aggressive on the backboards as well. I thought Syracuse was bringing the heat early with the banging. They were a lot of hip checking, which if you're slick enough to do, you can get away with. South Carolina's started to match them physically inside, and that's been the key. Other than the fact that I know, knowing Dawn Staley, the paint is still peeling on the walls because there's no excuse for the second chance points that Syracuse has gotten in this ball game with the Gamecock superior height.
All right, a couple of things real quick before we hear from Wayne Gallman. Baseball, USC down 2-0 in the first inning. Clemson up 1-0 on Miami in the third inning. Now, let's go to Clemson football practice again, Tigers post-spring drills, and the Wayne train. Let's hop aboard and hear what he had to say.
You know, push themselves to really meet the standard that Coach Sweeney set. I think we just left off on a greater level.
How good can this offense? Everybody's coming back on offense. So we expect to eclipse the numbers from last year.
Hopefully, yeah. You know, we got the opportunity to do it, but we just got to go out there and do it.
What do you see from some of the other running backs that you've been pleased with? And do you see any kind of separation there? I know they're all competing for that second spot.
A lot of things I've been seeing is just the effort and, you know, just being consistent is a big thing with the coaches. Adam, like I said, he's been doing good. He's been getting that confidence back in his league. Tyshawn, you know, Coach said today he hasn't seen him look that good in culture probably since freshman year. So Tyshawn's been really doing good. And CJ's really just, you know, had that confidence in himself to really learn the plays and, you know, do his best to really compete on that field. So they're all going to be good.
Yeah, well, you think they can be as dominant as they were last season, or even better?
It's not better. Shut up! Wait on the
You're impossible.
Okay, so you said you're talking about defensive line?
Oh, offensive line. Yeah, you think they have a chance to be even more dominant?
Yeah, I think we have a lot more, you know, these guys on the line that can really get out, help us out in the edge. And, you know, just from a point of attack, you know, Tremaine, we're really standing out. You know, Jay and all of them have a better off. So, you know, they're looking really good.
For you personally, is it working more on the fundamentals, or do you feel like they can work on something this year that they need to improve on?
I think I just got to work on everything. You know, I'm not perfect at anything, so, you know, I got to get better at everything.
All right, some comments or some noise from the peanut gallery there with Wayne Gallman, and certainly broke his train of thought. Again, more coverage of Clemson post practice on our website, sportstalksc.com. Men's turn late in the first half. Virginia on top of Iowa State, 41-26. 2 minutes left in the first half there, and Wisconsin and Notre Dame also underway. 8.5 minutes left in the first half, and the Badgers have a 17-13 lead on the Irish, and a couple of games coming up later tonight, including Syracuse and Gonzaga, and North Carolina battling Indiana.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, and people talk about how do you turn a program, and you've heard Frank Martin, you've heard every coach you've known now, that the key phrase now is changing the culture.
Mm-hmm.
If people are looking at TBS now and watching Wisconsin, talking about changing the culture, sometimes it's not pretty, but it's effective, the methodical play of Wisconsin. And they can run with it if they want to. They choose not to, similar to Virginia. They can turn it on and off. But when Bo Ryan came to Wisconsin 14 years ago, before his abrupt leaving this year, Wisconsin had been into the NCAA tournament 7 times. 7.
Mm-hmm.
the 14 years he was there and the 15th year he didn't finish, they've been to the NCAA tournament every year since. That's what you call about changing a culture, and that's what they've done at Wisconsin. And Notre Dame is got a tiger by the tail, because Wisconsin, nobody thought they'd be in the tournament. Then they turned it on late in the Big Ten season, and they've done one heck of a job, and they're going to be a dangerous out because they smell the Final Four.
We'll take you around the scoreboard one more time before we sign off. USC baseball, Clemson baseball, and college basketball, Sweet 16. Baseball scoreboard down in Coral Gables, 17th ranked Clemson taking on number 4 Miami, and Clemson on top 2-0. They've got Clayton Schmidt on the mound, and he's only given up a couple of hits through 2.5 innings. Miami batting now with a runner on first, nobody out. The Tigers up 2-0. Chris Oakey with a solo homer in that one for the Tigers. USC will have to come from behind in Oxford. They trail Ole Miss 2-0 as they play in the top of the first inning. A couple of first inning walks for Braden Webb, and it's been never a good thing. When we talked about this with John Whittle, too many walks for Webb, and that was his bugaboo there in the first inning.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss now with a 2-run lead over the Gamecocks. It could have been worse. He did pitch around a little bit of trouble. The Gamecocks at the half pro, they're up 10 in the women's Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm. And Syracuse could have gotten a little fuel. They hit a 3 right at the before the half to cut it to 10. It had been 13. I think the largest lead has been 14. And we've been checking out this Virginia and Iowa State game. See, Iowa State is one of those methodical teams, and Virginia may be looking in a mirror, so they're never out of a basketball game. And you realize about 20 seconds to go, Iowa State was a 3-pointer from cutting that huge lead that Virginia had down to 9. But Virginia, knowing the moment, got the rebound, came back down the court, and hit a basket of their own. And so they go into the halftime break with a 4-point lead. So Virginia, boy, you get down by 14, I don't care how good you are. It's tough because, as you say, they'll milk that clock for all it's worth.
And the Gamecocks do have a runner in scoring position. Dom Thompson-Williams stole a base, his 10th of the year. 10 stolen bases already for Dom Thompson-Williams. Wow. It's pretty impressive.
Well,
I don't think the Gamecocks stole 10 bases through their first 40 games last year.
Well, I really started to look at that, your Dodger teams before you even watched the Dodgers when they had Maury Wills, and how many, it never ceases to amaze me, if you got a guy that can run the bases, how much the guys behind him see more fastballs, more pitches they can handle, because you're afraid of that guy who's going to take off, and that kind of draws the attention of the pitcher. We saw that really when the Braves had both Otis Nixon and Deion Sanders running the bases, and boy, Fred McGriff used to see fastball after fastball.
We mentioned Brian Gregory out at Georgia Tech as the head basketball coach, so that job is vacant. It looks like the Western Kentucky job is no longer vacant, according to Jeff Goodman. Ex-Mississippi State coach Rick Stansberry will take that job, barring a last-minute collapse in negotiations. So
interesting.
Take that for what it's worth. We'll have baseball stories and more up on our website, sportstalksc.com, when the games wrap up tonight. We'll be back on Monday, same time, same place. For Larkin Belton, for the Professor Tom Hayes, Kevin McCrary here, wishing you a very happy Easter. We'll talk to you again, same time, same place, Monday night here on Sports Talk.